Employment Law in the Workplace, Nebraska Department of Correctional Services, presented by Allison Mueller. This training is for new and current supervisors for the Nebraska Department of Correctional Services. During this presentation, you will learn about different employment laws and your responsibility while working at NDCS. Equal employment opportunity is the law. Applicants and employees are protected under this federal law on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, age, genetics, and retaliation. Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act protects individuals against employment discrimination based on sex, religion, race, color, and national origin. Employees and applicants are protected in all aspects of employment, including applying, hiring, promoting, compensation, recruiting, segregation, and classification. Title VII prohibits offensive conduct, derogatory comments, or other verbal or physical conduct. Your role as a supervisor in keeping in compliance with Title VII is to treat all employees equal. You cannot discriminate between employees anywhere in the employment process from the time they apply to the time they terminate. Just because an employee is female does not mean that she needs to work at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women, or just because he is male, he cannot work at NCCW. The only time the sex of an employee comes into play would be when person searches are being conducted at the women's facility and the youth facility. You also cannot segregate employees, such as assigning primarily Hispanic employees to predominantly Hispanic housing pods. Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, or ADA, prohibits discrimination against qualified individuals with disabilities throughout the employment process. This includes applying procedures, hiring, firing, advancement, compensation, and job training. An individual with a disability is a person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, has a record of impairment, or is regarded as having an impairment. A qualified employee or applicant with a disability is an individual who, with or without reasonable accommodation, can perform the essential functions of the job. Reasonable accommodation may include, but is not limited to, making existing facilities used by employees accessible and usable by persons with disabilities, job restructuring, modifying work schedules, reassignment to a vacant position, acquiring or modifying equipment or devices, examinations, and training materials or policies, and providing qualified readers or interpreters. Amendment Acts to ADA have expanded on major life activities to include reading, bending, communicating, to name a few. The Act also expanded major life activities to include major bodily functions, including functions of the immune system, normal cell growth, digestive, bowel, bladder, neurological, brain, respiratory, circulatory, endocrine, and reproductive functions. As a supervisor, your role under the ADA and ADAAA is not to determine whether an employee can or cannot perform their job with or without a reasonable accommodation. Your job is to use the resources available to you. If an employee comes to you and requests a reasonable accommodation or states that due to their condition they will need more time off, you should refer that employee to our ADA coordinator located at Central Office. You could email her directly stating you have an employee requesting an accommodation, but your job is not to determine whether the accommodation is reasonable or not. You cannot treat employees differently whether they use an accommodation to complete their job, or if they can complete the duties without an accommodation. You also cannot make your own accommodation for them just because you think they may have a disability. The request for an accommodation needs to come from the employee. Age Discrimination in Employment Act of 1967, ADEA, prohibits age discrimination in employment decisions such as hiring, job retention, compensation, etc. This law applies to workers over the age of 40. As a supervisor, you will have a variety of workers on your shift and in your facility. You may be asked to help in the hiring process. You may not disqualify older applicants on the basis that they would be closer to retirement age or potentially not as fit as younger applicant. As long as they are qualified to do the job, they should be considered for the position, the training, the job assignment, or the promotion. When it is time to bid for posts, according to NDCS, you have to follow seniority and available bids left for the year. Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1978, or PDA, prohibits employment practices that discriminate on the basis of pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions. An employer cannot use the potential for an applicant to become pregnant as a basis for a decision. We cannot force a woman to take a leave of absence as long as she is able to work. We also cannot consider her pregnancy or impending leave in a hiring decision. As a supervisor, you know that the line of corrections can be both a tough and dangerous field. Pregnant employees are allowed to remain at work as long as they are able to perform their job duties. If required by a doctor to be on light or modified duty, the employee is able to continue to work under light or modified duty until cleared by the doctor. The duty restrictions and the back-to-work notice from the doctor would need to go through the ADA coordinator. If you are on a hiring panel for any position, custody or non-custody, you must treat a pregnant employee or applicant the same way you would any other employee or applicant. If she is the most qualified for the position, you must hire her even though you know in 2 months she will be out on leave due to childbirth. Family and Medical Leave Act, FMLA, is a federal law that lets covered employees take extended time away from work to handle certain family or medical needs. Eligible employees must have been employed by NDCS for at least 12 months and worked 1,250 hours during the last 12 months employed. Eligible employees can take up to 12 weeks of leave unpaid, but may supplement with available vacation, comp time, and sick depending on the situation. When an employee returns from FMLA leave, they are to return to their former job or to an equivalent job. As a supervisor, you need to have an understanding of the FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act. This isn't just for women when they are pregnant or after childbirth. Employees can request FMLA to care for a spouse, a child, or parent who has a serious health condition, or if they themselves have a serious health condition that will make them unable to perform the essential functions of their job. If approved, they are eligible for 12 work weeks of leave in a 12-month period, so the leave wouldn't have to be taken all at once. If you had a parent with cancer and depended on you to take them to their appointments, treatments, and aftercare, you would be able to use FMLA leave during those times. Maybe it's once a week that you need to use FMLA or a few times a month. FMLA is unpaid leave, but if the employee has leave time available, they are able to supplement with their leave time. At NDCS, if an employee's spouse has a child and the employee wants to be at home with them to help the new mom around the house and bond with the baby, the employee who had the baby would be able to supplement with sick leave as well as vacation and comp time available for the duration of FMLA leave. The employee who wants to help the new mom and baby at home would only be able to use sick leave on the day the baby was born and the day mom and baby leave the hospital. Otherwise, the employee would have to use vacation leave or comp time. Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970 requires employees to provide a safe workplace by informing employees about potential hazards, following health and safety standards established, training employees, and recording workplace injuries. As a supervisor, you need to make sure that all of your employees are up to date on training, that you and your employees are working in safe environments considering the field, and that you are reporting workplace injuries correctly and in a timely manner. Slips, trips, and falls can be the most preventable cases for workers' compensation. Every facility has a safety and sanitation specialist. If you see a potential hazard in your facility, it is your responsibility to report it. Make sure you have all of the personal protective equipment you need to ensure that you and your employees are completing their job safely. If you see an employee completing a task incorrectly or in a way that would potentially put their life in danger, pull that employee aside and explain what you saw and what it could mean for their health and for the facility. It could be anything from picking up a box and lifting with their back instead of using their legs to not securing handcuffs when taken off an inmate. Nebraska Association of Public Employees is the union that covers employees working under certain contracts within the state of Nebraska. All employees are eligible to join the union, but only certain employees covered under the NAPE-AFSCME contract have union rights. In order to have full union rights, employees must pay dues with each paycheck, be covered under the NAPE-AFSCME contract, and be off their original 6-month probation. The union renegotiates their contract with the state every 2 years for all state employees covered under the NAPE contract. The Fair Labor Standards Act regulates the minimum wage, overtime rules, and hours worked for all employees, but through negotiations, the union is able to lock down a set yearly raise, whereas employees not covered under the NAPE contract get the yearly raise that is decided on by the state. As a supervisor, more than likely you are not covered under the NAPE-AFSCME contract. You need to make sure that employees who are union members are not completing union tasks during work time. Employees have the right to post union material on non-work time and in non-work places. Employees are also not allowed to respond to union events using their state email or print union material on state-owned property. Employees have the right to decide whether they want to join the union or not. You cannot persuade the employee either way. You cannot change their employment status based on their involvement with the union. Harassment is a form of employment discrimination that violates Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, the ADEA, and the ADA. Harassment is unwelcome conduct that is based on all of the sections of Title VII, including race, color, sex, national origin, age, disability, and genetic information. Harassment can include offensive jokes and name-calling, but it can also be considered harassment if it interferes with an employee's ability to do their job. Harassment becomes illegal when putting up with the offensive and unwanted actions, communications, or behavior becomes a condition of continued employment, or the behavior is severe and pervasive enough to create a work environment that any reasonable individual would find intimidating, hostile, or abusive. As a supervisor, you need to let your employees know that our doors are always open and communication is key. If an employee is being harassed at work, we need to know about it. We can't fix the problem or investigate the situation if we don't know about it. Harassment can be anything from unwelcome, offensive jokes to threats. The harasser does not have to be a coworker. The harasser could be anyone from a supervisor, a contractor, or even an inmate. If you see it happening, write an incident report and turn it into Human Resources. Retaliation at NDCS is not allowed, no matter the circumstance. The same laws that prohibit discrimination also prohibit retaliation. The law forbids retaliation when it comes to any aspect of employment, including hiring, firing, pay, job assignment, promotions, layoff, training, and any other term or condition of employment. You cannot retaliate against an employee or applicant because they filed a charge with the EEOC or participated in an employment discrimination proceeding. As a supervisor, you cannot retaliate against employees when it comes to any aspect of employment, whether it is a promotion coming up or bidding for posts at the end of the year. Retaliation is illegal in all situations. If you have questions down the road and need to reference our employment policy at NDCS, you can find the Administrative Regulation 11201 on the Q drive on any computer within the agency. If you have specific questions, please contact either your facility human resource manager or a human resource manager at central office.